Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Blockchain Gaming News Roundup. It is Friday, 11th of October. I'm your host, Jenny Jordan. With me is John Jordan, as ever. Hi, John. How are you?
I am as ever, John. Yes, hello.
Good. Right, into October, into the fourth quarter. I guess we were actually last week as well.
Last week, yeah.
So that's no news. Anyway, it's getting colder.
Oh, yeah.
How's the general sentiment do you find in crypto gaming world?
A bit slow at the moment, I would say. I mean, we've sort of got plenty of news to sort of go through in terms of games being launched, which is good. But I would say at the moment it's sort of quite quiet in terms of just the sort of general news cycle that often.
I was thinking actually going through sort of the headlines. So it's actually not like a crashing token or anything like that, or big hype. It's actually games this week, which is quite a change. And as you say, it's positive, really. So one of the biggest news really was the Gunzilla Games, the German developer, released its Off the Grid early access on Xbox still. I think it's like play testing, pioneer testing, whatever they call it.
Yeah, I think it's different on Xbox because they did all their testing on PlayStation 5 a couple of months ago, really. So PlayStation 5 has been seems like the full release. PC is also
PC and PlayStation 5. Yeah, like you said, that's what it's been. But
it is playable on Xbox, but you have to join the Xbox, what's it called, Insiders Hub, which is basically an overall Xbox thing for sort of early access games. And then you have to sort of download it through there. So you have to. There's no gating on it. You just go in and sign up. And I've not actually played it. I have downloaded it all onto the Xbox and started messing around with it. Yeah, I mean I think Off the Grid is the most or the only AAA sort of game with blockchain in it. I mean, it's $100 million budget, or that's how much they've raised over a number of years.
Yeah,
and it is a very very graphically high-end game. I don't think anyone would sort of dispute that. Not really got any figures yet, early figures of how it only went live. Was it about two days ago, isn't it? So there's no sort of figures yet on it.
Now, obviously, with it being the first blockchain game to release on console, the interesting thing is how is the blockchain integration going to work? And so there's nothing of that live yet, is it? Or
no, I mean I think it is. Because even on the Xbox version, when I just sort of created an account, the thing you're collecting in the game is these hexes. Everyone always in these sort of extraction shooters always seems to have hexes as the thing you collect. But anyway, you get a box and it's a hex box, and you go to open it and it says you don't have enough guns, and guns is their cryptocurrency. So that was sort of interesting in the sense that was before I even played the game. There was sort of blockchain integration in there. Obviously, sort of the bad thing in there is. I thought, I got a free thing. I couldn't open it. And obviously, if I didn't know anything about sort of blockchain, I'd be like, well, or if it didn't, it didn't really tell you this is what you have to do to open this sort of gift. And it does say, if you sort of go through the sort of terms and conditions on the Xbox version, it says this is sort of an early access version. And we sort of, some of the things you get in the game may not roll over into the main game. So there is that sort of stuff in there. But I did kind of think it was, as I say, I've only really sort of scratched the surface on it, but I did think it was sort of funny. The first interaction with the blockchain was sort of like you would have on MetaMask, where you sort of go try and do something and it says, you have no ETH in your wallet, you can't do anything, and you have to go, what's ETH? Where do I get that from? And it's sort of a little bit like that with even in this sort of situation, it's sort of like you can't do the thing you want to do because you haven't got the guns is the token, is their gas token. So
now you would say that sort of opens a whole lot of problems. Immediately, you're gonna sort of distance quite a few players there. But
that may have been because it's on the Xbox and it's just purely on the testing. So I guess the other interesting bit was that they did get some pretty high profile streamers on. So I mean, I don't know. I'm really not au fait with a lot of streamers, but I guess everyone's heard of Ninja, who's probably still one of the most famous sort of streamers, and obviously they paid for him as their marketing, so he's been playing the game and posting on his socials, and they made a special skin for him. So when you go in to be a character, you sort of choose a skin and stuff, and they actually made a really nice one for him, and he's been playing the game quite a lot. So the other thing to say is, I mean, it still is the game. as I understand it, the game when it goes live properly will have a single player campaign mode that you would sort of play through just on your own to get a feel for sort of the setting and the controls and stuff. At the moment, they've just got the battle royale mode, and it's only 3x3. So basically, you either find two other people to play with, or it just randomly gives you other people to play with. Excuse me. Which is obviously not sort of great in terms of cohesion, because just getting two other random people to play with, and you can't really be a team unless you know them and stuff. So it's, even though it has gone live, it's sort of still is in the early stages. They say there's going to be a 2x2 mode and a solo mode coming. Obviously, traditionally, sort of battle royale has been chuck 100 people into a sort of location and let them fight it out. That's sort of the classic.
But to your point from last week, I think it was, or the week before that, when you were sort of waffling on a bit about game studios not getting their games out, they were sort of waiting for that right moment when everything is perfect, everything is complete.
Yeah.
That's not the case, obviously. Then there are more modes to come out and probably tweaks to be done, and so it's good that it's out there and it's sort of good enough to sort of be playable.
Yeah, so, and I guess because it has been such a sort of high profile game, and it's sort of been so weird because it's been a very high profile game. A very high profile game in the blockchain sector, but it's also been they've been very, very sort of quiet. They've not really. Compared to most blockchain games, which tell you every time the sort of the intern changes his pants, you get a tweet about it. There's not really been very little going on, and obviously that's because they're dealing with Sony and Microsoft, these console platforms, and it's almost like you have to sort of deal how they want you to sort of deal with stuff. So I can imagine nerves from that point of view, but there has been like a big information sort of void for the last 6 months, really, about the game. You could even argue for a year. So it's sort of I think it's very early stages for them, and because they're running effectively their own blockchain. It's based around sort of Avalanche, but it's their own sort of blockchain. And so behind the scenes, there's quite a lot of plumbing that they're doing, very different to just like rocking up and launching your game on Polygon, where a lot of that stuff is just sort of open source code. This is it's fairly complicated. Obviously, to be the first blockchain game on console is I'm sure a lot of legal complications as well in the background how you do it. So sort of good luck to them. But I think it'll be a slow, like all these things. It'll be a sort of slow burn, really.
But it's good for the industry that something has come out in 2024, because that was the talk sort of at the end of 2023 that next year we're going to have to see some big releases, really, considering the amount the kind of Web3 gaming industry as a whole has raised for the projects, and yet there hasn't been anything out there really to show what's come of it. So in that sense, I guess Off the Grid is sort of the biggest so far, and it's good for the industry to sort of show that this
I guess
to it.
I guess the counter is the sort of fear is that for whatever reason it doesn't sort of because it's very much competing with the likes of Fortnite and all Apex Legends and all those sort of other massive shooters that have been out there for years, and while lots of people will sort of try new experiences, it's quite. People only have a certain amount of time, so really you might play new games when they come in, but you're sort of very dedicated to the games that you've been playing for the last however many years. So there's a really competitive genre to be in, and that game could fail for many different. The likelihood is every big game that comes out fails. I mean, there's one called Concord that Sony was working on for years and years and years. Sony was an internal game. I don't know. It's quoted $400 million they spent on it, and literally they put it out and pulled it within a month. I mean, they just wrote it off. So that's a particular had loads of problems as a project, but releasing a game on console is no doesn't mean you're going to be even get any number of players for over a week or so. So I guess that's the counterpoint. Is sort of big news, but if it's a failure, I think that will be that doesn't mean blockchain games are a failure. I mean, this is a very particular project in many different ways, I think.
Says John Jordan, ever the optimist.
Yeah.
Right. The other news has been surrounding Ubisoft and its Captain Laserhawk, which is an Arbitrum-based game that announced this partnership with Magic Eden. It will be minting on the NFT marketplace Magic Eden, and as such, it will be the first Arbitrum game to do so. Now, you've had quite a bit of fun with Captain Laserhawk, haven't you? Sort of,
yeah, I think it's
about the absurdity around the whole sort of thing. So talk us through a little bit what this Captain Laserhawk, the game they call it, don't they?
Yeah,
so what it's based off. It's coming off this animation.
Yeah. So the reason they call it the game is because Captain Laserhawk was a Netflix series. It was actually quite well regarded, and it was sort of like I don't quite know the genesis of it, but it basically uses a whole bunch of internal Ubisoft IP to create this sort of apocalyptic world that is sort of, as these adult sort of comic animes tend to be, sort of quite tongue in cheek. It's sort of I guess we talked about it before, has sort of Rayman as the face of this sort of dystopian government in the US, which is sort of funny because Rayman was this little cute sort of Ubisoft's version of Mario, really. So it's sort of funny. So it is very tongue in cheek, and I think compared to say the monolith that is off the grid, Captain Laserhawk is clearly not going to be a massive game from that point of view. It's an IP that, or sort of like a collection of IP. At least, and Ubisoft can be quite tongue-in-cheek and quite experimental with it. So it's nice. Again, I think it's just nice to see sort of Ubisoft finally getting some stuff out. Actually, they also announced this week, didn't they, that Champions Tactics, their slightly more serious sort of a turn-based tactics game, is coming out on the
23rd October.
23rd October. And that's a very serious, very, very deep PC game. Again, I played the previous closed beta. And again, I'm not sure that game is going to be a mass market game because it just is incredibly complicated. how you have all these little. It's like playing a tabletop sort of RPG. No, not a RPG. Like playing a tabletop battle game with three little characters, and the way they sort of you level them up and the way they interact with each other, and there's thousands of different combinations or whatever. But from that point of view, as much as it is good to see, off the grid coming and being released, it's good to see Ubisoft, who've been, in the blockchain game space for 6-7 years, releasing stuff again. I don't think those are going to be sort of
game's
massive.
Coming to the Oasis blockchain, one of their verses, isn't it? So maybe it's not actually really aimed to be a mass market game as such.
No,
I get the impression that it's a more niched game.
Yeah, and I do think for those sort of big companies, no matter what new technology comes along, when mobile games came along, the big companies didn't immediately rush to put their top games on that platform. They want to get a bit of a feel for, one, how you technically build a game for this platform. They want to get a feel for who you market to. Do you market to the crypto people? Can you now market to the just general gaming people? Will they accept blockchain? Are you, if the genre is a particular type of genre, is that, for mobile, when you had a touch screen for the first time, what sort of gameplay fitted to that sort of touch thing? So all that takes time. But I would say we are starting to see, the other games we'll mention as well, we are starting to see people who have, proper game companies, as opposed to sort of crypto enthusiasts, and the level of polish you would have from a Ubisoft game. Champions Tactics is just from a sort of user experience, user interface point of view, incredibly polished. Just how things move and how you sort of, the menus and stuff. It's very, because that's, if you're making AAA games on console and you've been doing it for 20 years, that's the level of internal expertise you have. Outside of that, the level of expertise, say, a Sky Mavis has, probably one of the better, crypto blockchain games companies, native companies. They've been making games for 6 years, and when they first started out, there were like 5 of them. I mean, they just don't have. They're not going to be creating games at the level of a Ubisoft or a Gunzilla or whatever.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Right, let's move on. So, Immutable's mobile squad RPG Guild of Guardians launched in May this year. Via app stores, and now it's getting its sort of biggest update yet, since the expansion is coming on the 16th of October. It's added excuse me, it's it's dropped sort of new characters before, but this time it's sort of new dungeons and locations, some new characters and new champions, and so it's quite a significant thing for them. How significant is it? Do you think it's going to sort of move the needle?
As you say, it's sort of so. I mean, the game is a sort of squad-based RPG, and there is sort of games you have a sort of campaign mode where you're just sort of playing. They play versus environment. You're sort of playing through progressively harder dungeons to sort of unlock them all, and that sort of that's. Regular players will burn through that sort of excuse me content. You give me your cough. Regular players will burn through that content sort of fairly quickly, because obviously it's sort of it's to get people sort of again used to the experience. It's not supposed to be an endless game with 100,000 levels. It's supposed to be fairly limited. So I've not actually been working very hard on that campaign mode. So I'm not even close to. I think there's 4 different locations, and I'm still just finishing off the 3rd location at the moment. And there's multiple levels, multiple difficulties of dungeons in there. So this will be adding a 5th level. It's snow. It's sort of snow level. So it has that sort of thematic sort of change.
Frostmire, it's called, isn't it?
Yeah, it has a new boss, and you say 2 new Guardian characters there of the highest level, the legendary characters. So there's a whole new meta around sort of summoning those characters out. And when those characters come out, previously they've been around sort of the $50, $70 sort of dollar mark, and you need multiple of those characters if you're going to start leveling them up. So there's a bit of a sort of revenue sort of issue, sort of situation there. I mean, the majority of when you're playing Guild of Guardians is there's an endless mode, there's a sort of arena mode, which is sort of a PvP mode, although you're not playing people directly. It's sort of you're playing against their team, so asynchronous. And there's various other sort of modes that sort of come in, sort of guild bosses and stuff. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff as opposed to the sort of the main mode as well. They're also increasing, as part of the update, they're increasing some of the level caps as well. So people who are sort of have hit the maximum levels at the moment for some of their gear and stuff, that's all increased as well. But this sort of expansion is generally always about monetizing and engaging your current audience. I don't think that even blockchain is relevant to this. I don't think this sort of expansion gets you more players in, through the door, because this, if you don't know about Guild of Guardians, the fact it's got a new expansion is sort of meaningless to you, isn't it? So I think sometimes those expansions can be driving marketing. Like, if you have a certain game where you sort of do an IP collaboration, if they put Marvel in it, then obviously you start using Marvel characters in your marketing to get people into the game. So these expansions can be that, but then they're sort of somewhat different. So, I mean, Guild of Guardians, you say in general, has been out however many months it is now, May, June, July, August, September, October, so we're 5 months in. They've said 1 million downloads. I mean, downloads is somewhat meaningless sort of statistic, because obviously it depends on how much marketing money you put in it. You buy downloads. They quoted the figure of 250,000 monthly active users. I think that's from the sort of more from the launch period. I would think it's probably a bit lower than that now, or maybe quite a bit lower than that. On-chain wise, they're down to about 5,000 daily active unique wallets. That's not terrible in the sense that Guild of Guardians is not a game with loads of block. I play the game every day. I don't interact with I wouldn't count as an active wallet every day, because you're not always doing a whole bunch of wallet stuff. I think it would count when you do a certain sort of leveling up of characters. That they call it what they even call it. It's not when you enlighten characters. That's actually actively doing something to an NFT. If you have an NFT, when you unlock some of the boxes, you can sort of mint NFTs out of that. So some of the in-game stuff can be on-chain, but most of it isn't. It's a fairly standard sort of, I guess, Web 2.5 game from that point of view. But I think as a game, it is just in that sort of phase, as sort of maybe a bit of a theme for this podcast, is you release a game and it's people are excited, and they definitely had a spike on-chain when the thing went live, and but people churn out and start doing other things with their time and money, and then you get into this period where it takes 6 months to a year of just marketing, working out where your market is, how can you spend your marketing money in the most efficient way to get downloads, to get people into the game. Obviously, the majority of the people playing that game probably don't know it's blockchain because they're getting it through app stores. You don't create a wallet; it's all behind the scenes. You can play the entire game using fiat money, Apple Pay or Google Pay, or the payment systems within those app stores. I imagine a lot of people own NFTs in that game and don't really understand their NFTs. They don't call them NFTs; they call them Radiant Guardians, I think. So unless you were looking into it, you wouldn't know. So, but I just kind of think with all these games now, once you get them out, then there's that process of refining them, marketing, getting players in, which is nothing to do with that's what you do with every game. That's not to do with blockchain, but a lot of blockchain games haven't gone through that process, that 6 months process, that year-long process, that 2-year-long process of running like what we call a live service sort of game. So that's what they're into now. So as someone who plays the game, it's sort of good to get new content. I'm be excited to look at the new sort of characters.
Good. Now, our children are excited about the Sandbox, I think. It launched its alpha season 4 2 days ago. It's going to run for 10 weeks, so it takes us into, December?
Mid-December, yeah.
Mid-December. It's got a 2.5 million sand token prize pool.
It's actually dollar. It's dollars, so it's...
Oh yeah, that would be
it's $2.5 million worth of sand.
Worth of sand. Yeah, that's right. Let's get it right. Thanks. Good correction. And with it, obviously comes all these experiences, over 100 different experiences. I think some will be gated. Most of them, I think, will be open. They got this introduction of a battle pass system, which is new for this season.
Yeah.
Where, like I said, most things will be available and free. There will be ways there of earning sand, but there's also this alpha pass, they call it, which you can purchase for, I think, 25 sand, about $6. Yeah, and that will obviously give you access to areas that you otherwise wouldn't have, and access to rewards. Token rewards and other NFTs, and so you excited?
Yeah.
You were sort of asking for this a few weeks back. It's almost
yes.
And
no, you're right. I mean, again, it's better to get these things out. I've been increasingly critical of the Sandbox for not just going live, because I think particularly for the Sandbox, which is, if you know how any of these sort of platforms, like it's very much like a Roblox, obviously. They work when you have network effects and you can invite your friends in. Even a game like, Off the Grid, if you're really into shooters and one of your mates, says, "Oh, there's a new game, let's try it out." Then you've got your squad of 3 or whatever. You go into it as a group. And with the Sandbox, they keep putting these sort of alphas up and then taking them down again and cycling through, so the content isn't always live. They sort of are getting people through there. Obviously, it's easy for me to just go around telling everyone else what to do. So it's good they got it out, and clearly they are now getting, next year the thing will have to go live in some form permanently. So putting up monetization options such as a battle pass and getting people to buy NFTs to get more sand. Obviously, they're giving away a lot of stuff, so hopefully, at least for the people who are already into the Sandbox, it will re-engage people like me who maybe have been enthusiastic at certain times in the past and maybe less so now. I guess the other thing for the Sandbox is, and they have said this, I think, is the mobile version sort of does need to be out. So I think they've probably been hanging around to get the mobile client ready. Did you just know? I mean, I'm not saying the Sandbox is going to be played. Well, actually, no, I am going to say that. So I think Roblox is actually going to have the majority of its audience is going to be very sort of similar age range to sort of a Roblox. So probably not quite so young as Roblox. I mean, our 4-year-old, 5-year-old plays it. And Roblox sort of tapes out about sort of 15. So maybe the Sandbox will go. The crypto will have a bit more of a older sort of a demographic as well. But those people are going to be on tablets and phones. So you need to have a mobile client out there. So I guess that's why they're waiting. But this is a good next step. But 2025 has, so has to be the do or die for the Sandbox, and they just have to, nothing's ever as polished as you sort of said earlier in the podcast. If you're involved with product, you can always use another 3 months. You can always use another 6 months to polish something. That's just how life is. They call it sort of feature creep as well, that people end up adding more and more features and the thing becomes more and more complicated. At some point, you've got to get it out and get people into it. And even if the first 6 months is really hard because bits of it aren't as good as you sort of thought, or you realise they're much worse than you thought, you have to get people into it to drive that. So I guess thumbs up to the Sandbox for doing that. But I guess this is sort of the opportunity they really need to, go sort of in their minds. We're doing this, and then we're going into launch. That would be my sort of scenario. If it's like they do this, they stop at the end of December, and then they wait till the fall of 2025 to go live, then I just think you wasted the opportunity.
Any kind of positive angle of news I have here, John? I feel like I'm coming in with your very critical. Yeah. It's good with balance and context and the sober.
I was positive about Ubisoft.
Yeah. Now, lo and behold, here's something to be positive about. John has been playing Lumina Hunt, which is a good Telegram game. Those words even go together. No, I'm joking. Yeah. So. Tatsumeeko has launched its Lumina Hunt via Telegram. It's based on Ronin, and it's our game of the week. Tell us more, John, please.
Yeah, so I have talked about me being sceptical. I've been very sceptical about Telegram games, although talking to a lot, people who are using them for marketing. So clearly they do work from that point of view. I think they were diminishing return because the game is very hard for me to see the games being complex enough. And Lumina Hunt is, I think, on that borderline. So it's not a super complex game. I think it's not designed to be, but as the Telegram games go, it has enough sort of interactive sort of loops. So there's a basic gameplay loop, which is a bit tappy, and then you're getting resources, in this case of these animals, and then you're sending them off on quests, and you're earning other rewards, and you're using those rewards and some internal sort of points and tokens to sort of level up your abilities in the game and to catch better lumens and then go to do better quests. And the point of it, to be clear, is it is a you play this game to get on a leaderboard to get a token allocation for the Tatsumeeko game that's going live on Ronin. So it's not designed, it's sort of interesting in the sense that it's designed to be sort of, I imagine, a sort of disposable. It's not going to be running in a year's time. I think they're doing it to get people excited for their token launch, so it's very crypto. But lots of people do that with very much simpler games than this. This is quite a complex sort of game. I would say I'm still sort of learning how all the bits sort of interact. But I just find it, it's nothing. Once you sort of work out the levers and the cogs and how it all puts together, there's nothing, genius in there. But it's just very, very well done. Going back to sort of UX and UI. I mean, obviously it's a Telegram game, so it's not like the level of a sort of Ubisoft console game. But it's just not really nicely done. I've just really enjoyed it. And it does. Tatsumeeko, I think, are an interesting company that they started out doing Discord games. They were one of the first people to do sort of Discord games in Discord channels, and now they've been working on this sort of RPG that actually announced for Solana a couple of years ago. Now coming to Ronin. So if nothing else, Lumina Hunt is sort of getting me excited for the game going live, which I think is happening sort of fairly soon on Ronin. And I think they're not sort of traditional game developers, but their focus has always been on the sort of games within sort of social platforms. So obviously Telegram, they're sort of, is that exactly, and so I'm sort of quite looking forward to Tatsumeeko as a game coming from a team that's very focused on the social aspect of it. The game, we all know what an RPG is. You can sort of chop them up in different ways and add different sort of themes and bits and bobs. But how the social thing is going to work, I think, will be quite interesting. So, yeah.
Now, and as you say, it's like a complementary game, really, that you don't expect to be around in sort of a year's time. And we've seen that increasingly with games on Telegram and ton-integrated games. Do you think that maybe sort of where future sort of use case of Web3 games on Telegram, that's kind of what's going to work? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think so. The one thing that Telegram will be good at, as I say, I can imagine in my head someone actually building an MMORPG on Telegram. I think any game can go into any tech, but you'd have to build it in a way that's using the bots. And obviously, Telegram as a social platform, social sort of messaging platform, is very social. So I could imagine in my head a sort of a weird RPG where me and you and maybe some of our kids sort of play, and we're not sitting there sort of playing, but we sort of there's different roles, and we parcel it around, and you're building. I don't know what if you're still building a city or building a whatever. And I can imagine the get because the good thing about social games is the sort of the retention and everything is created by sort of the people playing the game, not the game itself, if that makes any sense. So the game can actually be quite lightweight graphically and all that sort of, but we're sort of talking about it as long as sort of stuff happens and we, did you see that, or this character came in, or so we're sort of creating in this case, use my sandwich analogy, we're creating the ham. So the game's creating the sandwich, but we're creating the meat and the fun of it. I think that's going to be, that's going to take time to do really, and still Telegram is. It's not like a Facebook Messenger type thing where you necessarily, people on Telegram, you sort of may know, you may have real people, but equally you may have a whole bunch of not real people sort of thing. Whereas obviously Facebook is much more a real network, so it's slightly different. But I can see Telegram as being a really good place where you sort of test out concepts and you just maybe, you have a browser game or a mobile game, but you sort of run a little campaign in Telegram and, doing something, testing out a different sort of gameplay mechanic or trying to re-engage an audience or something like that. Because I can see that sort of definitely working. And that's sort of what people are doing with these Telegram mini-games at the moment. It's just that in a lot of cases they don't actually have their main game out yet. So it seems like, Catizan is the main game. But maybe Catizan could, or Flappy Bird's a better example. So Flappy Bird is doing a mobile and browser version, but at the moment it just has out its sort of Telegram mini-game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely think there's more. I think that's where Telegram games will sort of end up being. I think they sort of come in and tap 1,000 times an hour to try and get some token is by the time that worked, it didn't work anymore, sort of thing. So.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Okay. Now, lastly, you have been talking to Bazooka Tango CEO Bo Daly in conjunction with its card game Shardbound going live across Steam and Epic Games, launching early access, I should say. Yep. Open beta.
Open beta. Yeah.
I mix up all these.
I don't know what the difference is. No.
No. Okay. So thanks. Anyway, it's co-developed with Immutable. I guess Immutable has mainly played the role of sort of working out how to use blockchain in the game, because Shardbound, as it were, was not initially a blockchain game. It was a Kickstarter project, which sort of failed to raise funding and then rebooted as an NFT game. So as I said, you spoke to the CEO. What did you take away from that interview, John? And have you played the game as well? Haven't you? I downloaded it when I had time to buy it.
A few of the themes we've discussed, I suppose. It's a PC game. It is a deck building turn-based tactics game. So you're basically you have a deck of characters effectively, and as you get mana points to use them in the sort of battle, you're playing against another player, and you're on a hex-based battlefield, so you're moving your players around and then doing sort of battle actions, different ways of winning. Obviously, kill the enemy sort of commander, or there's these sort of you can collect victory points, so basically controlling bits of the map at certain times. So different ways of winning. It's very as sort of Bo said, they actually knew the people, I think called Spirit Walker, were the original game developers, and they actually worked together in a previous company, and that company had sort of gone bust, which is why these other companies sort of spun out. And so they'd sort of known them as sort of mates, I think, and they'd always been quite impressed about, particularly the sort of the world building around the sort of Shardbound universe. When that game, I think they tried to work together for a few years. Bazooka Tango had been doing something else at the time, and then it sort of came together that they could have the opportunity to sort of take over this game that they'd sort of been quite excited about, and that had run out of money, as you say. In terms of the blockchain side, it is a fairly light integration, I think. So the cards that you build your decks with are NFTs, and you can do the typical sort of leveling up and trading them and stuff. They've never mentioned a token. Maybe that's in the sort of roadmap at some point. But it's not. I mean, I sort of said to him, this is not. You don't really lean into sort of crypto marketing at all. It's and it's partly because I think Bazooka Tango very much are a traditional games team. Bo has worked on he's been in the games industry like 20 years. Worked on loads of sort of big games, Red Dead Redemption and what's it called?
Vainglory.
Vainglory, the mobile MOBA, and he's worked on a whole bunch of other stuff, some MMORPGs that weren't released properly, or didn't weren't very successful. So he's not coming at it from like I was mining Bitcoin back in 2014 as some people were, and I think that's sort of quite refreshing in a way. He's very much like, this is a game we think is really good. We really, this is a small team, but we think this is a really well polished game. We think it will really appeal to our audience. We've had 100,000 pre-registrations. I said, are you worried you're going to get review bombed on Steam for being a blockchain game? And he's like, well, I mean, that is what it is. We think our game's good enough that when people get into it, they're really going to love it and spend hundreds of hours playing in it. Again, going into open beta, they're sort of particularly testing monetization. I don't think there's much monetization in there at the moment. I think they're not quite. They want to see how that plays out. They've got sort of gacha boxes and stuff like that, which are also still controversial in some circles. So how that plays out with the blockchain trading side of things, I don't think they know. The other interesting thing, which I hadn't sort of come across at all with Shardbound is, and he was very much like, we want this, we want to make multiple games in this world. So clearly goes back to the thing that they really love Shardbound as a sort of universe, and the characters in there, and this is a very particular game. I mean, one of my sort of criticisms is I think this, from what I've played of it, it's sort of really hyper polished, and it's one of those sort of games where I wish I had the time to spend to get into it, but I know I probably don't. So I think it's sort of a niche audience. I think it's quite hard to expand that audience to millions of players. He obviously thinks he can, but he also said, maybe it's the third game down the line in the Shardbound universe that really sort of takes off or something like that, which is sort of quite ambitious because obviously it costs lots of money to make games. So if the first one doesn't work, you don't get the chance of making the second one, let alone the third one. But that's something. Interoperability of assets is something that occasionally comes up in blockchain, or is always sort of there in blockchain, but isn't in vogue at the moment. It's not a term I discussed really with anyone recently. So it's sort of nice that they're coming. They're sort of maybe it's a compliment. They're one of the least sort of crypto blockchain games out there. And that's I think there's space for everyone. There's space for the degens and this, but equally this was just I think if anyone does take out the time to sort of play it, it is a very solid, well put together game. So
no, you do, and like you say, it's refreshing to hear that, because often you do interviews and you speak to developers who would say it's about the game first and crypto second or whatever, but they don't actually mean it. They really they're really enthusiastic about the crypto in there, whereas Bo doesn't seem to sort of. I mean, he really loves the game in itself, the design and the whole world, and that's his thing. That's what gets him going, sort of thing.
Yeah, and they're not a game where they're going to go right. We're launching the Shardbound chain, next week, and buy our nodes or something. It's just that's absolutely not what they're involved with. So.
Now, saying that, they don't have a token, but you will be able to get some. IMX token, yes. You'll be getting some gems actually for playing in the early stages. You can earn it, and if you log in with your immutable passport wallet, you'll get some gems, and then those gems can be converted to immutable utility token IMX.
You have to win 3 games. I think you have to win 3 games as well.
Oh, so, okay. Good. I see that might be really difficult actually. I've not played it, so come back to you on that one. Right. On that note, we're going to finish for the week. But thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.